part of the education needs to be, what could you become? Like, show you your potential in different directions. And then when you see it, it pulls you forward. You don't have to be pushed against it, right? So if you see the potential, it pulls you towards it. And then you're like, okay, what are the things that I can learn? What are the experiences that I can take that will take me one step closer to that potential, right? So those were the kind of things that were uh, influencing my thinking about how learning should be. But what we don't talk about as much is that our education has never been this important, right? We live in the information age. Things that we are learning right now will be obsolete by the time you're graduating if you're in university, right? And this trend has been there for like already 7-8 years, right? Information is changing extremely fast. The only way, the only skill that can keep us relevant and help us grow with the environment that we are living in is if we are in love with our learning, is if we are intrinsically motivated to learn. Learning in and of itself needs to be a goal.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Being Different show. Our goal with this show is to introduce you to people and ideas that can help you improve the quality of your lives. Our guest today is someone who you will relate to the most as he went through the traditional way of Indian education of becoming an engineer only to realize that the path was not meant for him. He discovered his own path and is now the founder of Life Plugin, which is a company that creates deep, immersive, and transformative educational experiences. He's an international speaker and has spoken at stages as Mind Valley, UNESCO, and TEDx. His TED Talk, The Wheel of Modern Education, has been watched over 7 million times. So, guys, please help me in welcoming the man who created his own destiny and is now on a mission to create Disneyland of learning and education, Gautam Khetrapal. I'm honored to have you on the show, Gautam.
Man, I need the script of what you just said. That's amazing. I'm really humble, and you use really big words, and it's quite touching. I'm really grateful that I get to share my experience in a meaningful way that adds value to other people. It's one of the greatest gifts I've had. Thanks.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, Gautam, as you talk about that you want to create a Disneyland of learning and education, what do you exactly mean by that?
Great question. Um, well, my upbringing, and as you know, the talk wheel of modern education, the way it came out to be, and this is a common thing that millions and millions upon people feel every single day. It's like kind of this disconnect when we join, especially our adult education system. And but I have the same case. It's not unique anymore. Especially after I gave my TEDx talk, I realized it's not unique at all. One of the things I wanted with this idea of Disneyland of learning and education is I believe our learning and education needs to be intrinsically motivating and intrinsically rewarding. And right now, the way our system is designed is that it only has extrinsic rewards. You do this so that you can get that. You do this so that you can get that. Right? And I was living in Malaysia back when I gave that talk, and an average Malaysian after graduating from university, on a year reads only 5 pages in a book after graduating. That's what happens when the extrinsic reward disappears, right? And what I enjoy and what I stumbled upon through my experiences was that when learning and our education becomes intrinsically motivating and intrinsically rewarding, things become way too much fun. Every single area of life that you want to improve, your thought process changes. You don't think, I can't do that, it's too difficult. You start to think, I wonder what skills would be required for me to, accomplish XYZ. And then your following question is, I wonder where can I learn those skills? And the moment you switch your perspective, so, that's too difficult, I don't know how to get that, to I wonder how can I get that, that mindset of learning can only happen if you're intrinsically motivated to learn and not extrinsically motivated. So I wanted to create an ecosystem where our learning is intrinsically rewarding. And the aspect of education that speaks to me the most is in the realm of personal development, self-help, transformational education. So that's the intention through which I started this company called Life Plugin and put the mission to build a Disneyland of learning and education.
And I relate to that so much because when I was in school, I didn't learn because I wanted to learn. It was just because I had to clear this examination so that I can go to another grade and all of that. But as soon as I passed my high school, I wanted to learn so much, and I felt so curious because there was no reward for me as in to like pursue like some examination or something. And I think that's also what I mean. I got an idea about Disneyland of education. I was thinking about like actual Disneyland, wherein like parents pull their kids out of Disneyland, and like
Yeah.
creating a Disneyland of education would mean like when students are there studying on their own with intrinsic motivated.
Yeah, and there's three elements to like driving your education, right? So one of them is things that you learn in your own time, your self-education. These are your books, podcast courses, physical programs that you enroll into in your local reality. And then there are deep immersive experiences. To me, when I think about Disneyland, I don't know if you've been to. Have you been to Disneyland?
I haven't.
Okay, so if Disneyland is one of the only places. The moment you take the first step in that huge, grand landscape where you see the castle on top of the mountain, there's this whole new energy. The moment you take the first step, you know you're in a different world. It's that magical. It's humongous. I don't know, 100,000 people can be accommodated. My numbers could be completely off, but you take the first step in and you feel the energy that it's different. You are in a different world. And to me, that's what drives me. I love creating transformational experiences because physical experience is what speaks to me the most, right? Bringing people together. The idea of removing doing things in isolation, which we're doing more and more and more in our generation. We'll talk about that. Right, we're doing it more and more. Self-work, being self-made, learn in my own isolation, and further perpetuating the problem of loneliness, and further perpetuating the illusion of independence, right? So that's a conversation that we might have in a later time. The idea of having a place where the moment you step in, your guards can go down. The moment you step in, you're excited because of the adventure that you might experience, instead of the stress or the fear or the anxiety. That's a place that I envision, and that's the intention behind every single summit that we create. We bring in like 300 people every 6 months uh, to a location like by the beach or in the mountains, and have a transformational experience, which is a residential summit. Or we take about 10 people in a further secluded area, a bit more high-end experience, more intimate coaching and nurturing environment, right? Every single experience that we create physically, our intention is that the moment you step in, from the first step, that's the goal. If we have that goal, think about the kind of things you'll have to engineer at the time of registration, the way you speak to people, the way you train your employees. There's a lot of engineering that goes behind it, and that's what interests me, right? So right now we're doing these 300 people events, and we do some high-end masterminds for 10 people at a time. And then our main goal, how this Disneyland would function, is that we want to create self-sustainable communities across India, starting with India and then across the world. Because there's only so many summits or the adventures that I can do, the 10 people event that we call adventure, because there's only so many I can do. I can do three, four. After that, I get exhausted. But for it to go beyond like 1,000 or 2,000 people that I can impact every single year physically, is that if we can create the core DNA, the core essence of Life Plugin, what does it mean? Like the core values, growth, friendships, play, being humble in your greatness. These are the core values. And how can we take that DNA and replicate that and create self-sustainable communities that are living growth as a lifestyle? Right? So there's every city that you go to, there's a community which is curated. So you have to be invited to get in, and they're having these rituals. These are they're pushing each other to grow. They're playing with each other, going wild together. So that's how I envision this vision of Disneyland of learning and education unfolding.
And that makes learning so much fun and adventurous. And it
I
turns
hope.
it into a play. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Gautam, as you like went on to becoming an engineer, what was your point in life wherein you realized that the education system is not for you?
um, I stepped into engineering by choice, or rather, I didn't have a choice, not because of my family. I come from a very, not financially privileged at all, but relationally privileged environment, right? So I didn't have to do anything. I was just born in a place that was emotionally safe, and my parents would say, "Do whatever you want to do." But as I was growing up in India, there was not really many narratives that are pointing you in the direction of whatever success could mean, to propel you forward, except doctor, engineer, lawyer. That's it, really. Right. So I had heard about these streams. I knew that these are some things that I could take, and I was quite smart. I cracked through IIT extended merit list, in case you want to
Whoa.
know. So not the first time. The first time I didn't want to study, so I didn't study at all. Like my any kind of examination, I was just didn't care. Right. So I have this sense of rebellion. If everybody's following a path, it naturally drives me to go in the other direction. I just always had that. Everybody has a degree to it, and for me, I'm a bit higher on that spectrum. The best way to get me to do something is to tell me not to do it, and so
Oh,
that's how it works for me. So when that stream, everybody was following that direction, it created this response that maybe that's not interesting. But I didn't have any other choice, and my parents were supportive, but I didn't have any other choice, so I chose that. But once I went, and I had a great time. Like every single time I went to a educational experience, my school, I I was, even when I was sick, I couldn't wait to get out of my bed. My parents would have to tell me, no, no, you cannot go to school. But I just loved it so much. Obviously, not the classroom, like not all the educational aspects, but just the idea where bringing my friends were there. This vibrant energy was there, meeting the same people, familiar faces at the same location all the time, and having group learning experiences. There was some magic to it. At least the way I received it, it was amazing. So my joy from going to a place of education was quite cool. I liked it quite a bit. And when I went to my university, that was the first time I moved away from my city. It was like a completely different location, and I was feeling a lot of disconnect. I naturally found my friends there. But when I went to my university classrooms and the way things were getting conducted, especially like I was one of the top rankers to enter the university, and the way I saw things happening in my university, it just didn't speak to me, and it further amplified my view of how much of a rat race brainwashing that everybody is going through, and with no fault of anyone, right? And there are a lot of people who are incredibly smart and do really cool things with it, but vast majority that I found in my surrounding, not just in my university, but in friends that I made from different universities, the idea of education was everybody viewed it as a means to an end, right? It's like the light at the end of the long tunnel. You'll find a successful job, right? So it was just how much can I suffer through it so that I can get past it, and then 4 years later I'll have finally some happiness. And that idea started to pull me away further and further away, and I stumbled upon ISEC. It's the world's largest youth run organization. So that changed things for me, because I think a lot of people have these questions in their mind and these feelings, like you mentioned yourself as well. But ISEC pointed me in that direction and opened this new world. Literally, I stepped in, and the moment I put my first step in, I knew I was in a different world. That's how it was. Like, it literally that, and hindsight is 2020. So as you're making me reflect on my experience, I can see, okay, that's where I got the inspiration from. But ISEC is one of those places that a lot of the inspiration of the things that I do today comes from, right? Because it is a really inspiring organization that mobilizes over 200,000 students every year to work voluntarily when they're in their universities, right? When they're in their most rebellious age, they get them to volunteer for the organization full time, often for years, right? Because the way they've engineered the curriculum, the way they've created this strong sense of belonging, and the way they made your learning and growth in the context of leadership intrinsically motivating. So those things spoke to me quite a bit. And thankfully, I was not scared enough to continue my path with ISEC, and my education, my engineering education, took a side seat, and I focused full time on my ISEC career. And I spent more time in ISEC than actual university. Like I spent 6 years in ISEC. I took a 4-year engineering degree, right? And
whoa.
it's a youth organization, right? So it completely replaced my education, and that's where I had the taste of realizing, okay, that you can actually study. Like when I joined ISEC, I was picking up books and reading myself because I wanted to grow. When you join university, when you go to school, you are handed over the books that you have to study. That was the first difference, right? I noticed things around, and I noticed, these are the areas that I would like to grow in. So they needed to show me, right? Part of the education needs to be, what could you become? Like, show you your potential in different directions. And then when you see it, it pulls you forward. You don't have to be pushed against it, right? So if you see the potential, it pulls you towards it. And then you're like, okay, what are the things that I can learn? What are the experiences that I can take that will take me one step closer to that potential, right? So those were the kind of things that were uh, influencing my thinking about how learning should be, right? So that kind of that culminated and shaped my mindset into how do I engineer learning experiences. And I had a, I think we teach best what we needed to learn, and for me this was it. The reason why I believe I'm so good at doing these things, creating learning experiences that are remarkably transformational and fun, is because that's what I needed the most, right? So that's what I learned in my early experiences in my university, in ISEC, and then in Mind Valley, and through different global experiences. The way they can make education so much rewarding and fun, I think that's what influenced my thinking into doing what I'm doing now.
That's actually, I mean, really great because our traditional way of education, it always talks about extrinsic motivation, and when you utilize extrinsic motivation, it's a limited resource. It doesn't bring the most out of you. And as you said, when you show someone their potential, it intrinsically motivates them. So, do you
Mhm.
think you were intrinsically motivated like while growing up, or was there a point where you became intrinsically motivated?
Intrinsically, like I was intrinsically motivated to do things for sure. There are always things we are intrinsically motivated for, right? But when it comes to the context of education, from time to time, yes. And there were things that I was naturally quite good at, like a typical Indian stereotype. I was really good at uh, mathematics or physics. I was like my strongest suit, right? Like critical thinking was quite good. But I also had this, my intrinsic motivation was not to go in the direction where everybody else is going. It has partly to do with with my upbringing. The second child is naturally more rebellious than the first one. There's like one of the research was
Yeah, why is
presented.
that though? But I find
Yeah,
that true as well.
yeah, it is like they did some studies on it. The second child, and like if you're more than like 2 to 3, then the the last one, the youngest one. So I'm forgetting. I remember the second one because it spoke to me and it clarified things for me. It's from the book Originals by Adam Grant. If you read that book, he talks about, okay, this strong desire to go against the current. Like I was just like in my family, I had much bigger role models doing the exact same thing, right? So that wasn't unique enough, right? So everybody was doing the exact same thing in my family, and they were cool people, like really smart, well respected. But that path they had already taken, so it didn't speak to me to take the same path, right? Because just in the hierarchy of things that I grew up in, right? Kids when they're growing up, they're finding their sense of independence, like through different means. For me, in the hierarchy that I grew up in, for me it meant doing exactly the opposite. So my parents had a very tough time managing me, right? Now they are fine with it, but like they had to go through it for like 6 7 more than, like I would say, about a decade of dealing with, every time there's a sense of rebellion, and it was showing up in not just education but in harmful ways as well, right? So that sense was always within me. So I was intrinsically motivated, but I was intrinsically motivated to discovering new paths always, right? So if there is a way, I wouldn't just have aversion to, like, screw that, I don't want to do that. But I would start thinking, what is the alternative way that people normally don't take? So I was already attuned with that mindset, blessing maybe my early childhood conditioning that drove me in that direction. But I think that's one of the things that I'm usually like attuned to. Like, how what can be a unique way of thinking about this problem that other people are not thinking? So I think that influence naturally in the kind of talks that I give, the kind of work that I do, and the kind of consulting that I do, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, when I was watching your TED talk, I've watched it quite a few times now. Uh, the model that you talked about is like the wheel of modern education, and I find that personally really interesting. How did you come up with that?
Wow, very interesting question. Uh, it was my first ever TEDx talk. It's such a, I was ashamed of this talk, by the way, because they had lost my slides. I'd lost a lot of time. You will see like the slides are just moving around and they're playing random stuff in the back. and I was like really agitated, right? But the preparation of the talk was quite interesting. The way I was, I was told 6 weeks before that, hey, you're invited to speak at TEDx. I said, yes, amazing, right? And then I started going into what are the things that I know, and I had to put a lot of consciousness into the things that I was unconsciously doing for 7 to 8 years. So that process was not smooth, right? It was like, oh, I got eureka moments. Oh no, it's like, oh, I'm borrowing these ideas from here. Oh, this is not unique enough, and then this is like that. And I started taking feedback, and this is interesting that most people don't do, especially in the world of public speaking, right? I started taking feedback, sharing my ideas already beforehand to see how does it resonate with people. So the talk that you saw was not the final product that I was delivering. In fact, my talk 6 days before the TEDx. So I spent 5 weeks preparing a talk. I gave it to my friends, delivered it, and I said, "What do you think?" And one of my friends said, it's interesting, but I wonder what could it's like interesting, nice, inspiring, like cool messages. But I wonder what can people take away from this talk. It wasn't the one that you saw. Right? It was just about like how education is outdated, education system is outdated, and a few things that makes it like that. Something on those lines. I don't even remember. I'm so glad I tested it with my friends. And when that friend asked me that question, that messed me up because 5 weeks of my preparation now is down the toilet. And I took a walk in at 2 a.m. that day when I shared it with my friends, got the feedback, took a walk at like 1 or 2 a.m. I said, screw this. This is really messed up. I have nothing. And I have to keep on thinking about this to myself. And this is my, I think part of my creative process is just walking and talking to myself. So I took a walk in KL at 1 a.m. and started thinking about what could be the takeaway. And then I first, and this was outside any research. Every single thing before that I had prepared was all research, borrowing principles from here and there. I said, okay, let's just spend time with myself and see what could be like the output. What is one thing that people can take back and just take it home, right? That's what I wanted. Someone gave me that question, so I started thinking about it, right? And that was naturally interesting because nobody else talks like that when it comes to talking about education system problems, especially on TED. So that became exciting. At the same time, I realized I wish I had more time. So I took a walk and this framework came into my mind. I said, quite interesting. It was like an hour and a half walk and I was supercharged. I said, holy shit, where is this coming from? And I put things in my Evernote. I went to the office the next day. The next day was Saturday, so the office was closed. I went on the whiteboard and I put the framework there and I tried to destroy it. Like, can this be broken down? And I got like this crazy scientific genius guy that was like in-house researcher of Mind Valley, the most critical guy, the most like a young Jordan Peterson, like that kind of guy. Say, hey, can you break down this model? Do you see this fitting in, or can you break it down? Like I have never won any argument with him until that time. And he said, man, this is spot on. Like there's no loopholes and this one fits. So that gave me the confidence. But now I have 3.5 days left. I said, okay, so I just have to close the talk by this. But that means I need to change the part before. But that means I need to change the part before. And long story short, within like when I have 3 days left, I realized I have to redo the whole talk. And half day, like when I'm on the train to the venue, which is 3 hours away, I was finishing my presentation at the time. So that's how I came up with it.
And that was an incredible talk, by the way, Gautam. Really.
Thank you. Yeah, it was quite a journey to actually go through this, because when we are, especially in the realm of when you're teaching, teaching from experience, every time there's a new talk to be delivered, it's an inspiring experience for me to go through because I have to put consciousness into my own experience and present it in a meaningful way that can add value to others. Not to like me, but add value to others so that they can take something away. Right. And that was a really interesting experience. It's one of the reasons why I love teaching and, doing guest speaking and workshops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really appreciate that. So, Gautam, could you like break down a bit the model that you teach and how one can apply that model in their own learning?
Okay. So I think people should you just refer to the talk would be easier. But one of the things we need to understand is that we talk about education system is outdated. We keep on beating this dead horse like, hey, education system is outdated. We need to get rid of it. Everybody knows that. Right? We've known that for 15 years. But what we don't talk about as much is that our education has never been this important. Right? We live in the information age. things that we are learning right now will be obsolete by the time you're graduating if you're in university, right? And this trend has been there for like already 7, 8 years, right? Information is changing extremely fast. The only way, the only skill that can keep us relevant and help us grow with the environment that we are living in is if we are in love with our learning, is if we are intrinsically motivated to learn. Learning in and of itself needs to be a goal, right? So how can we do that? How can we drive it? It will be intrinsic if you're driving it yourself, right? How do you drive it yourself? There's three things, three elements. First one is self-education. These are the things that I talked about: books, podcasts, courses, workshops that you attend. These are things that you go study in your own time to go deep into a particular subject of your choice, of your interest, right? And then there is this element of tribes, because if just having the best research put together in books about education was the solution to education system problem, we had solved it, I don't know, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, when Udemy was picking up, Coursera, Khan Academy, all these companies, they've digitized education curriculum really, really well. But there's this other element that we don't as much talk about, is your peers. There's often almost exclusively in adult education, there's more that you learn from your peers than from the teacher who's facilitating the class, almost always. And we don't talk about it. We are social animals. We are designed to thrive in environments where we are sharing an experience together. We are pushing each other to grow, and we collectively grow together, right? And that happens when you are in an environment with people who share the same goals, desires, pain points, challenges. That is what I call your tribe, right? So this is, what is your tribe? What are the kind of people are you interested in? What are the kind of educational experiences you're interested in? Go find those experiences. You'll find people who are interested in the same experience, and they always have a community, right? So that's the tribe part. And then from tribes, so you have self-education, which is important, and there's tribes, the people who are interested in studying the same things intrinsically as you. When this happens, when you find your tribe, it often leads to deep immersive experiences. These are short-term, 2 to 5 day experiences where you go deep into a particular theme or a topic of shared interest, and you have some aha moments, you stir some emotions, you have a lot of fun, and you create a lot of lasting memories. Right? These are your conferences. These are TEDx is a form of a deep immersive experience. Live Plugin Summit is a deep immersive experience. Right? They are short-term experiences, but what they do is that they reinforce the shared values, the shared connection, and the shared interest of the tribe, right? Because these people come together and reinforces that connection. If you look at religious education, how did religious perpetuate for thousands of years? They've known it for a long time. Right? They have their own education curriculum. They have their tribe very well curated, based on invite only, right? And then they have their deep immersive experiences, their festivals. Festivals, they are like what? Large, like massive, colorful, vibrant experiences for very short term that brings the tribe together and reinforces the shared values, the shared stories again and again, right? So that's how this model has existed for as long as human history has existed.
Whoa.
Right? Means keep on changing, right? So your self-education, things that you take back from your tribe or from your deep immersive experiences, these are things that you study on your own time, right? Now think about it this way. When I go to a deep immersive experience, deep immersion for a conference, right? And I'm sitting in the conference hall and there's a nice session. I'm making notes. Somebody's saying, oh, okay, you should check out this book. I'll mention some books to you here. If somebody's listening to it, what are they doing? Oh, okay, that's a cool book that was referenced. Oh, that's a cool podcast that this guy mentioned. I make a note. And what do I do with those notes? I put them back into my self-education, right? So my self-education feeds into my tribes, and my tribes feeds into my deep immersion. And you can start anywhere. You can join with the area of your interest, that you're something that you want to study, or just find a group of people who are interested in the same things that you are interested in, or just go at events which speak to you, and you start the motion of your own education, right? And you sit in the driving seat, because you determine your curriculum, you determine the people that you want to hang out with, and you determine the kind of experiences that you choose to go into. And the beauty of this is that this curriculum is, you're the dean. You're the dean of your university, right? So you can change the curriculum every year, and it's supposed to, right? We're not supposed to end our learning or our education. It needs to be lifelong, right? How can it be lifelong? Only if you engineer it, right? Only if you are choosing. You can bring in facilitators. You can go to different universities from time to time, but it needs to be a lifelong education model that you are sitting in the center of. So that's what I call the wheel of modern education.
Gautam, two things I found really interesting. The one that you talked about, I mean, you connected education, modern education with the religion aspect. And I literally got chills when I saw that connection because it's so fascinating that we've been living into that model and we haven't realized that. And it's really fascinating how you connected the both. And one thing you said about you're the dean of your education. So
Mhm.
that's something I'm gonna use for sure.
Use it.
It's
Use
really
it. Take.
yeah, you're the dean of your education. It's really cool. So,
Thank you.
Gautam, for someone who is like in their school ages or in the college life and still figuring stuff out, what message do you have for someone like a
Mm.
student?
Okay. So there's three things: fall in love with learning,
Mhm.
live personal growth as a lifestyle, and play more. These are the three things I would say.
Wow, incredibly put. So, before we wrap this conversation up, what's the impact that you want to have on the world?
Very cool. Okay. I run a transformational education company. And one of the things I'm realizing is that the world, even the word personal in personal growth or self-help, right? This is further perpetuating the sense of separation with others. The current narrative of the self-help industry is like grow so fast so you get to know your friends have to get to know you all over again, right? Like outgrow your friends, right? Be self-made. There's no such thing as self-made. To me, it's we are not recognizing our deep interdependent nature, us being social animals, and also us being deeply interdependent with every single thing around us, with nature, with environment, right? And the current narrative of self-help, lone wolf becomes self-made. We are obsessed with getting things fast. Instant influencer. How do I get to like 100K followers in like 5 days? If I can find that recipe, I'll take it, right? I want to go really, really fast. We're interested in that because we are in instant gratification mode all the time. That's the culture that we live in. And what I think we don't recognize as much is that yes, these fast highs also bring fast lows, right? And what we're interested in right now is to get things faster, 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 fix things faster, faster, faster. What we don't recognize is that there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And to me, what's interesting is that how can we collectively grow? How can we collectively come in the context of growth? So the gift that I want to give to the world is that everyone in the world can, if they can find 3 to 5, something that I call elevating friends. If everyone in the world has 3 to 5 friends, you push each other to grow. You can be vulnerable with each other. You laugh together. You can go wild and have like crazy adventures together. If everyone in the world can have that, 3 to 5 people, no more, we don't need a self-help industry. We will not have a mental health epidemic in the world that we have right now. This idea of like we need to build this illusion of highly built independence, become self-made. This illusion is not serving us because our success is not in our independence. It is in our interdependence. So what's interesting to me is to create a deeply interdependent network that lives growth as a lifestyle constantly and elevating the whole ecosystem together. So that's what I'm interested in.
Wow, that's a really powerful message, and I have also like personally found it really uh, true as well because like when you are in a group of people who share similar goals and interests, you tend to grow faster and better, and the collective experience and the vibe of the group like pushes you forward, and it just there's this infectious energy to that group. I feel like so yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
really
it
true.
feels like sometimes when you're in it, it feels like a vortex. It's hard to describe when you find it. And we're getting further and further away from it because we're more in front of our screens. We think more in the sense of separatedness and thinking too much on our own egotistical aspect, not because of any fault of our own, but just the culture that we live in, the things that we are pushing forward as humanity, as human technology. So it's just a dilemma that we find ourselves in, but it's a great awakening opportunity as well. So I think that's the curve that I find myself in on.
That's great. Thank you so much, Gautam. It's been a real pleasure to have a conversation with you, and all those insights that you gave. I literally think that these can help a lot of people figure things out and fall in love with learning, I should say.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure, always a pleasure to
Hmm.
share things that
Hmm.
I've been blessed to receive. Like somebody paid it to me, paid it forward to me. My job is to just pay it forward further. So if you find something of value, I'm glad, and I hope you pay it forward too.
Hmm. Hey guys, if you found this conversation valuable, do make sure that you like the video and share it with your friends. And if you already haven't, do make sure that you subscribe to the channel by clicking the red button below. See you later. Until then, stay awesome.